World War II air combat produced many legends, but almost none of them begin with a man hanging defenseless beneath a parachute while enemy fighters line up to execute him. On the morning of March 31st, 1944, Second Lieutenant Owen John Baggett became trapped in exactly that moment, suspended 15,000 feet above the Burmese jungle with blood soaking his flight suit and Japanese Zero fighters circling like sharks. In the China-Burma-India theater, parachutes did not mean safety. They meant delay. The Japanese Air Force routinely shot airmen out of the sky while they descended. There were no rescue helicopters, no nearby friendly units, no enforcement of the Geneva Convention. Once your bomber was gone, survival depended entirely on what happened in the next few minutes. World War II over Burma was not a secondary front. It was a grinder. Allied aircraft were being lost at a rate that stunned planners back in Washington. Every week, dozens of planes vanished into jungle and mountain terrain controlled almost entirely by Japanese infantry. Supply lines stretched thousands of miles. Replacement crews arrived slowly. Experienced pilots died fast. On this particular morning, a single B-24 Liberator from the 10th Air Force was part of another routine mission aimed at cutting Japanese rail lines feeding the front. The target was Mandalay. The bomber never reached it. Japanese Zero fighters intercepted the formation far from the target, attacking out of the sun with practiced precision. Cannon shells tore through aluminum skin. Engines ignited. Fire spread faster than the crew could react. The bailout order came with seconds to spare. 10 men jumped. White parachutes blossomed across the sky. Then the Zeros slowed down and began hunting. World War II. Doctrine offered no protection to men in silk canopies. In the Burma theater, shooting parachuting aircrew was standard operating procedure. There would be no investigation. No consequences. No witnesses left alive. Owen Baggett watched it happen in real time. One of his crewmates drifted a few hundred yards away when a Zero slid in behind him, fired a short burst, and shredded the parachute canopy. The man fell screaming from more than 10,000 feet. Another was killed seconds later, shot through the chest as he descended helplessly. The message was clear. Every parachute would be destroyed. World War II turned ordinary people into participants in decisions no training manual covered. Owen Baggett was 23 years old. He grew up in Graham, Texas. Before the war, he pumped gas and saved money for flying lessons at a small municipal airfield. He wanted to be a fighter pilot. His eyesight kept him out of fighters and put him into bombers instead. Now, floating over enemy territory, he had no aircraft, no support, and no chance of rescue. He carried only a standard issue, Colt M1911 pistol, meant for survival on the ground. It had never been intended for aerial combat. World War II technical briefings taught every American airman the same thing about the Mitsubishi A6M0. It was fast. It was light. It turned tighter than any Allied fighter. And it burned easily when hit. The Zero had almost no armor. Its fuel tanks were vulnerable. But that knowledge assumed you were firing from a turret or a fighter cockpit, not dangling in the sky with frozen hands and blood loss setting in. As Owen drifted downward, wounded and dizzy, he counted the enemy aircraft. 3 Zeros. More than half a dozen American parachutes still visible. Simple math. Unless something changed, everyone would die before reaching the ground. The Zero fighters climbed back up, repositioning for another pass. One of them selected Owen. At this point in the story, pause for a second. If you want to hear how an unarmed bomber crewman changed the outcome of this moment, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. It helps keep these forgotten World War II stories alive. Now back to Owen. World War II survival often depended on doing the opposite of instinct. Owen made a decision that went against every natural reaction. Instead of trying to evade, instead of reaching for his weapon, he went completely limp in his harness. His head slumped forward. His arms hung loose. Blood continued to drip from his wound onto the white parachute fabric. From a distance, he looked dead already. The Japanese Zero slowed dramatically, approaching cautiously. The pilot wanted to confirm the kill visually instead of wasting ammunition. He throttled back to near stall speed and slid in close, offset just a few dozen feet from the parachute. He even opened his canopy for a better look. That decision created a window measured in fractions of a second. World War II rarely offered clean opportunities. This one was razor thin. Owen waited until the Zero was almost alongside him. Then he moved. His hand went to the pistol. He drew in one smooth motion, extending his arms straight out, compensating by instinct for wind and movement. There was no time to aim properly. The distance closed to less than 40 feet. The first shot tore through the open cockpit. The second struck the canopy frame. The third entered behind the pilot's ear. The Japanese pilot collapsed forward onto the controls. The Zero nosed down and began an uncontrolled dive toward the jungle. Owen fired once more, then stopped. The aircraft vanished below, exploding on impact in a fireball that sent black smoke climbing into the morning sky. World War II. Logic says this should not have been possible. Pistols do not shoot down fighter planes. Parachuting men do not win aerial gunfights. And yet, 1 Zero was gone. 2 remained. And for the first time since the bomber exploded, the certainty of death cracked open. World War II air combat over Burma did not pause after one impossible moment. The sky remained hostile. The ground below was worse. Owen Baggett was still bleeding, still descending, still deep inside territory controlled entirely by the Imperial Japanese Army. The Zero he shot down vanished into the jungle, but the danger did not. 2 Japanese fighters remained airborne. They continued their passes against the remaining American parachutes. Owen watched helplessly as the calculus of survival played out again. A navigator took rounds through both lungs. An engineer was hit in the abdomen and slowly bled out before reaching the ground. Parachutes collapsed. Bodies fell. The sky emptied itself of men. By the time Owen reached the jungle canopy, fewer than half of the bomber crew were still alive. World War II did not reward miracles with mercy. It merely delayed death. Owen crashed through layers of foliage and branches, his parachute snagging in the upper canopy before tearing free. He hit the ground hard, rolled, and lay still beneath towering teak trees and thick undergrowth. The Burmese jungle closed around him instantly. Sound swallowed itself. Heat replaced cold. Insects moved in seconds. Silence returned, broken only by distant aircraft engines fading away. He released himself from the harness and assessed his injuries. Shrapnel had torn through his left thigh, missing the bone but shredding muscle. Blood loss had weakened him, but he could still move, still think, still survive. World War II. Survival manuals never prepared airmen for this terrain. No maps, no radio, no friendly villages, only jungle, mountains, rivers, and patrols. The Japanese 18th Infantry Division controlled the region. Thousands of soldiers, aggressive patrol patterns, prisoners rarely survived long. Owen improvised. He tore strips from his parachute and tied a crude tourniquet. He drank from his canteen sparingly. He chose to move only at night. During daylight, he hid beneath thick vegetation, covering exposed skin with mud to mask scent and insects. He followed stars when visible. When clouds blocked the sky, he followed water downhill. knowing rivers led somewhere, even if that somewhere was dangerous. By the third day, fever set in. Malaria. By the fourth, infection crept into the wound. Swelling. Heat. Pain that blurred thought. Hunger became constant. He ate nothing. He drank when he could. He walked because stopping meant dying. On the fifth night, exhaustion won. Owen collapsed beside a narrow animal trail used by water buffalo and patrols alike. He lost consciousness before dawn. World War II captivity began without ceremony. Japanese soldiers found him at first light. They did not shoot him. They bound his hands. They dragged him upright. They marched him toward Rangoon. Rangoon Central Prison housed hundreds of Allied prisoners. The facility was designed to break bodies and erase identities. Cells meant for 4 men held 12. Disease spread unchecked. Dysentery, beriberi, malnutrition. Beatings were routine. Interrogations were violent. The Japanese wanted intelligence, bombing routes, airfields, aircraft performance. Owen gave only name, rank, and serial number. For that refusal, he was beaten, starved, isolated, locked inside a wooden box barely larger than his body for days in tropical heat. He survived by counting seconds, by remembering home, by refusing to let his mind collapse before his body did. Other survivors from his crew arrived over the following weeks, fewer each time. 2 died from disease within months. 3 lived to see liberation. World War II moved on without them. The Burma campaign shifted. Allied forces advanced. Supply lines tightened. Japanese resistance cracked under pressure from multiple directions. In May 1945, British forces retook Rangoon. Owen walked out of prison weighing less than 100 pounds. He required weeks of hospitalization, treatment for tropical diseases, dental reconstruction, psychological evaluation. The war ended while he recovered. During debriefing, officers asked him to recount what happened in the air. He told them everything. The parachutes, the Zero, the pistol, the shots, the crash. They wrote it down, filed the report, marked it unconfirmed, no witnesses, no wreckage, no proof. World War II bureaucracy did not reward stories that sounded impossible. Owen returned home to Texas in the summer of 1945. He walked with a limp. Loud noises startled him. He received a Purple Heart for wounds sustained in action. Nothing more. He did not talk about Burma. He did not attend reunions. He did not correct anyone who assumed the story was exaggerated or false. He built a quiet life instead. The world moved on. Decades passed. World War II records remained buried in filing cabinets on opposite sides of the Pacific. American after-action reports, Japanese loss logs, patrol notes, small details waiting for someone patient enough to connect them. In the early 1980s, a researcher examining Japanese aviation records noticed something strange. A Mitsubishi Zero from the 64th Sentai failed to return from a mission over Burma on March 31st, 1944. The pilot was experienced. Confirmed victories. No enemy fighters reported in the area. No ground fire recorded. The wreckage had been found deep in jungle. The cockpit showed bullet damage. The pilot had died from a small caliber gunshot wound to the head. Japanese investigators at the time concluded ground fire. Chinese guerrillas, perhaps. But no guerrillas operated within miles of the crash site. The only small caliber weapons present belonged to downed American aircrew. The researcher followed the trail. Japanese reports, American files. One unconfirmed claim stood out. Owen John Baggett. The details matched perfectly. The Air Force reviewed the evidence, compared dates, locations, circumstances. They found no other verified case like it in aviation history. One man, one pistol, one impossible shot. Nearly 4 decades after it happened, the kill was officially confirmed. And that raised a final question that still divides historians. Did Owen survive because he was lucky, or because he was willing to do what no one else thought possible? World War II. Survival in Burma was measured in instinct and pure luck. Owen Baggett landed deep in the triple canopy jungle, 3 miles from the shattered remains of his B-24 Liberator. His parachute harness released. He collapsed against a teak tree, breathing ragged, blood soaking his flight suit. Shrapnel tore through muscle in his left thigh. The pain pulsed with every heartbeat, but he forced himself to focus. He fashioned a tourniquet from parachute cord, tightened it just enough to slow the bleeding, and assessed his supplies. He had a Colt M1911 pistol, a survival knife, a canteen, and nothing else. The Japanese army controlled this territory with elements of the 18th Infantry Division, roughly 12,000 troops spread across 300 square miles. Every sound could betray him. Every shadow might be an enemy patrol. The first night, he moved quietly, sticking to the densest undergrowth, navigating by moonlight and distant stars. He avoided main paths, rivers, and villages. Hunger gnawed at him, but he drank sparingly from small streams, knowing contamination could be fatal. Malaria fever hit on the 3rd day. His shrapnel wound became infected on the 4th. Fatigue slowed his steps. Dizziness blurred the edges of reality. Yet he pressed on. Each day, he calculated distance traveled. Each night, he counted breaths and seconds, using mathematics in his head to keep his mind sharp. Japanese patrols were relentless. Owen dodged them through stealth, using the jungle as cover. On the 5th day, a Japanese team discovered him unconscious near a water buffalo trail. They carried him to Rangoon Central Prison, a facility housing 800 Allied prisoners of war in conditions lethal to nearly 30% within 6 months. Dysentery, beriberi, malnutrition, and beatings were routine. Interrogations demanded intelligence on bombing tactics, airfield locations, and aircraft capabilities. Owen gave only his name, rank, and serial number. He endured broken ribs, 6 days without food, and 14 days confined in a 4-foot by 4-foot by 3-foot isolation box in tropical heat. Survival became a mental exercise as much as physical. He counted seconds, recited memories of Texas summers, and imagined his family to maintain sanity. Over the following weeks, other survivors from his crew arrived at the prison. Out of the 10 men who jumped from the B-24 Liberator, only 5 survived. The co-pilot and navigator died, along with 3 enlisted men. Those who remained suffered disease and torture, but endured. Outside, the war pressed on. Allied forces advanced through Burma in 1945, retaking Rangoon in May. When Owen walked out of the prison on May 6, 1945, he weighed 93 pounds, down from 165. Hospitalization was required for 7 weeks for tropical diseases, wound treatment, dental reconstruction, and psychological evaluation. The Army awarded him the Purple Heart for wounds received in action, but no Air Medal or Distinguished Flying Cross for the impossible kill. Owen returned home to Graham, Texas in July 1945. He weighed 120 pounds, walked with a limp from the shrapnel wound, and startled at loud noises. He tried to resume normal life, working in his father's dry goods store, managing inventory and stocking shelves. He married in 1947, had 3 children, coached Little League, and served on the school board. Stories of his wartime experiences were almost never shared. The confirmation of his Zero kill came only in 1983, 38 years after the event. A researcher studying Japanese military records discovered a Zero from the 64th Sentai missing after a mission on March 31, 1944. Bullet damage in the cockpit matched an American pistol shot. The Air Force Historical Research Agency verified the account. Owen Baggett's parachute pistol kill became the only confirmed instance in military aviation history. No medal ceremony followed. No public recognition beyond a brief letter from the Secretary of the Air Force. Yet history recorded the fact. The Zero crashed in the jungle 3 miles from the bomber site. No recovery team ever retrieved the wreckage. Tropical growth and rain erased all physical evidence within 5 years. Owen lived quietly, aware of what he accomplished, and passed away on May 26, 2006, at the age of 85. Surrounded by family. His story remains preserved in archives, official records, and the memories of those who studied the extraordinary acts of ordinary men under impossible circumstances. World War II left traces far beyond the battlefield. Owen Baggett's story is one of survival, ingenuity, and improbable courage. After the war, life for veterans was often quiet, ordinary, and unremarkable compared to what they endured. Owen returned to Graham, Texas, and lived as a businessman, a husband, and a father. His exceptional act, the Zero he shot down with a pistol while dangling under a parachute, remained unrecognized for decades. Yet that moment in Burma on March 31st, 1944, left an indelible mark on military history. Records confirm the details. A Zero fighter, pilot Lieutenant Shigetoshi Kuro, 11 confirmed victories, broke formation, and crashed into the jungle 3 miles from the downed B-24 Liberator. Japanese investigators initially attributed the kill to possible ground fire, but no Chinese forces or other combat occurred within 10 miles. Only Owen Baggett's Colt M1911 pistol had the capability to deliver the fatal shot. Air Force historians reviewed the evidence in 1983 and officially recognized the kill as the only confirmed aerial victory achieved by a parachuting airman using a sidearm. The recognition came quietly. No medal ceremony, no national announcement, just a brief letter from the Secretary of the Air Force. Owen's life afterward reflected the modesty and resilience of a man who had stared death in the face at 15,000 feet and survived. He rarely spoke about the war. He avoided reunions and interviews. He did not seek fame. Yet through the meticulous preservation of military and Japanese records, his moment of impossible heroism became part of the permanent historical record. The men of his crew rest in various places across the world. Graves in Arlington National Cemetery, Manila American Cemetery, family plots in the United States, and some never recovered. The exact coordinates of the crash site of the Zero and the bomber are documented, yet the jungle over Burma, now Myanmar, remains largely unchanged, dense, dangerous, and indifferent. No memorial marks the precise spot where one man defied odds that physics, training, and common sense said could not be overcome. Statistics provide context. The United States Army Air Forces lost roughly 94,000 personnel during World War II, killed in action, died of wounds, or lost in accidents. In the Pacific and China-Burma-India theaters, approximately 40,000 perished. The 10th Air Force, Owen's unit, lost 568 aircraft and roughly 4,000 personnel. Most of these deaths left no witness, no verification, and no recognition. Owen Baggett survived by breaking every assumption, defying logic, and relying on courage, patience, and presence of mind. Owen passed away on May 26, 2006, at age 85, surrounded by family. His grave in Pioneer Cemetery, Graham, Texas, is marked simply with his name, dates, and branch of service. No mention of the Zero he brought down with a pistol. Visitors pass without knowing that at 15,000 feet above the Burmese jungle on March 31st, 1944, a single airman performed an act of extraordinary heroism that would only be officially recognized decades later. The story of Owen Baggett exemplifies the extraordinary within the ordinary. Ordinary men and women, faced with impossible odds, can shape events in ways that seem unimaginable. History remembers not only through monuments and medals, but also through careful documentation, archival research, and the meticulous correlation of facts across decades and continents. This story survives because historians cared, because records were kept on both sides of the Pacific, and because extraordinary acts leave traces that time cannot erase. World War II created countless legends, many forgotten, some exaggerated. But Owen Baggett's act remains verified and unparalleled. A Colt M1911, a parachute, and a clear mind against 3 Japanese Zero fighters changed the odds for survival and etched one man's courage permanently into history. His story teaches that even in the face of overwhelming danger, a single decision can defy expectations, preserve life, and create a legacy that endures for generations.